I think I'm still in a bit of shock and denial, frankly. And I was sitting in the makeup chair when I heard just somebody say, "Oh, Robert Redford died."
When Robert Redford died in 2025, Hollywood didn't just lose a legend, it lost a man whose influence shaped generations of actors, including Meryl Streep. On September 16, 2025, tributes poured in from across the industry, with Jane Fonda, Ron Howard, and Stephen King all honoring his legacy. But one of the most talked about reactions came from Meryl Streep, who shared a brief, emotional message that reignited decades of fascination with their connection on screen. So what did Meryl finally say about Robert after all these years? And why did her words carry so much weight, even decades after their iconic collaboration? Join us as we uncover what Meryl Streep finally revealed about Robert Redford at 76. The scene that started a 40-year conversation. There is a moment in the 1985 film Out of Africa that people who have seen it tend to remember for the rest of their lives. Robert Redford is kneeling beside a river in Kenya. Meryl Streep is sitting in front of him. He pours water over her hair and begins to wash it, slowly and carefully, while reciting lines from Samuel Taylor Coleridge's poem, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. The scene lasts only a few minutes, but has been discussed, quoted, and written about for 4 decades. In May 2024, Meryl Streep was at the Cannes Film Festival receiving an honorary Palme d'Or, a recognition of her entire career, and she was asked about Out of Africa. She gave an answer that stopped the room. She said the shampoo scene was a sex scene in a way, because it was so intimate. She told the audience at Cannes' Théâtre Debussy that the world had seen so many scenes of people having sex, but it did not see that loving touch, that care. The crowd gave her a significant round of applause for saying it that plainly. Coming from the woman who has more Oscar nominations than anyone alive, calling a hair-washing scene in a river the most intimate thing she had ever filmed on screen was not a casual remark. It was a considered opinion held across 40 years. What she also revealed at Cannes was how that scene actually came together behind the camera, because it did not start out the way it ended. Redford initially had no idea how to wash a woman's hair in a way that felt gentle and intimate. He was kneading her scalp the way you would knead bread. It was not working. Meryl's longtime hair and makeup artist Roy Helland took Redford aside between takes and quietly gave him some instruction on how to do it properly. By the 5th take, she was so in love with her co-star that she did not want the scene to end. She told the Cannes audience that she did not want it to end that day, even in spite of the hippos. The hippos were a real concern. The production had warned the cast and crew that the animal responsible for killing the most people in Africa was the hippopotamus, particularly when you came between one and the water. They were shooting in a river. The hippos were directly above them. Neither Streep nor Redford had any control over that, and both of them were aware of the danger the entire time they were filming. She still did not want the day to end. That is how much that moment meant to her. Wild animals nearby, a famous co-star who needed coaching on how to shampoo hair, a river in Kenya, and Meryl Streep falling in love with Robert Redford by the 5th take of a scene that had no physical intimacy at all. And she carried that memory for 40 years before standing on a stage in France and telling the world it was the best love scene of her career. But the story of what was happening on that film set goes deeper than one beautiful scene. Because while Streep and Redford were forming a connection that would last until his death, the director standing behind the camera was becoming increasingly unhappy about exactly that connection. So what was really going on between the three of them while Out of Africa was being made? The director, who kept trying to pull them apart. Sidney Pollack had hired both Meryl Streep and Robert Redford to play Karen Blixen and Dennis Finch Hatton, two real historical figures whose love affair in colonial Kenya became one of the most written about romances of the early 20th century. Sidney was one of the most respected directors of his generation. He had worked with Robert Redford before, most notably on The Way We Were with Barbra Streisand, and he understood well how to get the best out of his leading man. What he did not anticipate was what would happen when that leading man met Meryl Streep. In the 2019 book Queen Meryl, Robert recalled what developed between him and Meryl during the filming and how much it bothered Sidney. Robert said they liked to talk. They would be off camera between takes, taking it easy, finding each other funny, discovering that they shared a sense of humor that connected them in a way that was entirely genuine. Sidney did not like that and would break it up when he saw it happening. The director was frustrated that his two leads were forming a bond that he could not fully control, that existed outside the frame of the film he was trying to make, and that did not fit his picture of who Robert was or how their professional team should function. Robert said it caused ripples. He said Sidney felt bothered that he was connecting with Meryl in some way that did not match the director's existing mental picture of him. And the pressure that Sidney applied to separate them professionally created a situation Robert described with a specific word. He said he felt like he was in a vice, and that the vice made him resentful. Out of Africa was shot largely on location near the Ngong Hills outside Nairobi, Kenya, with the city of Nairobi itself recreated for the production's early 20th century setting by a team of local workers. The filming took place in 1984, and the conditions were genuinely difficult. The country was in the middle of a drought during production, and the crew had come close to moving the entire location to a different country before the rains arrived just in time to save the Kenya shoot. Lions were imported from California for certain scenes and turned out to be less tame than advertised. It was the kind of production where the environment itself was constantly in the room alongside everyone trying to do their jobs. Within all of that, Meryl and Robert were finding each other and finding it difficult to stop talking whenever they had a moment off camera. Sidney kept separating them, and Robert resented being separated. Meryl, on the other hand, was falling in love with her co-star by the fifth take of the shampoo scene, even with the hippos overhead and the untamed lions nearby. The film that came out of all of this tension and warmth and location difficulty was released on December 18, 1985, and received 11 Academy Award nominations. It won 7 of them, including Best Picture. Meryl was nominated for Best Actress. Robert, notably, was not nominated for Best Actor, despite being widely considered to have given one of the more charming and controlled performances of his career. It was an Oscar snub that did not diminish his connection to the film or to his co-star. And it certainly did not prevent the two of them from working together again. So if the first collaboration produced that kind of tension and that kind of warmth simultaneously, what happened the next time these two people were in front of a camera together? Lions for lambs, and the friendship that kept growing. After Out of Africa, 2 decades passed before Meryl and Robert were on screen together again. In the years between, their careers went in different directions, but their friendship continued. Redford had become increasingly interested in directing and in the Sundance Film Festival, which he had founded in 1981 as a way of creating opportunities for independent filmmakers who could not get through the doors of the major studios. He directed 9 features across his career, winning the Academy Award for Best Director for his debut film, Ordinary People, in 1981. He continued acting through the 1980s and 1990s in films including Legal Eagles, The Natural, Out of Africa, Indecent Proposal, and Quiz Show, which earned him Academy Award nominations for both Best Picture and Best Director as producer and director. In 2007, Robert directed Lions for Lambs, a political drama built around 3 separate storylines unfolding simultaneously across the same 60-minute period. The film starred Robert himself, Meryl Streep, and Tom Cruise. Meryl played a journalist being given an exclusive briefing by a Republican senator, played by Cruise, about a new military strategy in Afghanistan. Robert played a college professor confronting a disengaged student about his responsibilities as a citizen. The 3 storylines were connected thematically rather than narratively, and the whole film was constructed as a series of conversations about American politics, war, and civic responsibility. It was not the romantic epic that Out of Africa had been. It was something considerably more cerebral and considerably less commercially successful. The film received mixed critical reviews and did not perform strongly at the box office. But, for Meryl and Robert, it represented the second time they had chosen to be in the same room professionally. And the fact that Robert both directed the film and cast Meryl in it says something about the trust and comfort between them that had been built across the previous 2 decades. He could have cast anyone. He cast her. In a 2008 interview with Good Housekeeping magazine, Meryl revealed that Robert had given her parenting advice that she had never forgotten. He had told her, when her children were babies, that they were not her props. She said it directly. Robert Redford taught me that when they were babies. That is not the kind of advice you give to an acquaintance or a professional colleague. That is the kind of thing you say to someone you know well enough to observe how they are operating with their kids, and to care enough to say something honest about it. It landed. She remembered it for decades and brought it up unprompted in a magazine interview. The friendship that ran alongside the professional collaboration was genuine and specific in ways that both of them confirmed repeatedly across the years. And when the news came in September 2025 that Robert Redford had died at his home in Utah, it was the genuine quality of that friendship that made what Streep said in response so precise. So, what exactly did she say when one of the most important people in her professional and personal life was gone? And why did 6 words communicate more about their relationship than most full-length tributes could have? One of the lions has passed. Robert Redford passed away peacefully in his sleep on September 16, 2025, at his home at Sundance in the mountains of Utah. His publicist, Cindy Berger, confirmed the news and said he was surrounded by those he loved, in the place he loved most in the world. He was 89 years old and had spent the final years of his life largely outside the public eye, on the property in Utah that had been central to his identity and his work for decades. The tributes that came in from Hollywood were immediate and sustained. Jane Fonda told the press that it hit her hard when she read the news that morning, and that she could not stop crying. She said, "Robert stood for an America that we have to keep fighting for." Ron Howard called him a tremendously influential cultural figure and an artistic game-changer for his contributions as an actor, producer, director, and as the founder of the Sundance Film Festival. Elizabeth McGovern, who owed her career to Robert casting her in Ordinary People, said simply that he had given her her first job. Marlee Matlin credited Robert Redford's Sundance with bringing her film Coda to the attention of audiences who would otherwise never have seen it. Meryl Streep's statement began with a 6-word-long sentence. "One of the lions has passed. Rest in peace, my lovely friend." The lions are not incidental. In Out of Africa, lions carry a specific weight that runs through the film's imagery and through the real relationship between Karen Blixen and Dennis Finch Hatton. When Meryl chose that word to describe Robert in the moment of his death, she was reaching back to the film that had defined both of them to each other and to the world. And she was placing him in a category of creature that carries itself with power and grace, and the particular kind of authority that does not need to announce itself, she was not saying he was famous. She was saying he was magnificent. And then she added my lovely friend. Not my talented co-star, not the great actor Robert Redford. My lovely friend. The personal came first. The professional came after, embedded within it. The statement required no additional context and offered none. It said everything about what Robert Redford had been to Meryl Streep across 4 decades. And it said it with the economy of language that belongs to someone who has spent her entire career understanding exactly what words cost, and when fewer of them are worth more than many. But to really understand why that matters, you have to look at the man behind it. The man whose legacy outlasted everything he made. Robert Redford's career is one of the most substantial in the history of American cinema. And it is worth taking a full look at what he actually built, because the scope of it is easy to underestimate when you focus only on the most famous films. He was born on August 18, 1936, in Santa Monica, California. He attended art school and drifted through his early 20s before enrolling at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York and making his Broadway debut in 1959. He built a theater career before breaking into television in the early 1960s, appearing in Alfred Hitchcock Presents, The Twilight Zone, Perry Mason, and Route 66. His stage career reached a high point with the lead role in Neil Simon's Barefoot in the Park in 1963. And the film version 2 years later helped establish him as a Hollywood name worth watching. His genuine stardom arrived with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid in 1969. Directed by George Roy Hill, and starring Redford opposite Paul Newman as the two legendary outlaws. The film became the highest-grossing picture of the year and created one of the most celebrated screen partnerships in Hollywood history. Robert and Paul reunited for The Sting in 1973, which also became the highest-grossing film of its year, making Redford one of the very few actors in cinema history to have starred in the #1 film at the box office in 2 separate calendar years. Through the 1970s, he added All the President's Men, The Way We Were with Barbra Streisand, and The Candidate, building a body of politically conscious work that reflected a specific and consistent view of American society. He stepped behind the camera in 1980 with Ordinary People, a family drama about grief and repression and the specific silences that accumulate in households where feelings are never spoken. The film won Best Picture, and Robert won Best Director. He was nominated for Best Picture and Best Director again for Quiz Show in 1995. He received an honorary Academy Award in 2002. And then, in 1981, he had already done something that arguably mattered more than all of the individual awards combined. He founded the Sundance Institute, creating the infrastructure that eventually gave birth to the Sundance Film Festival, and with it, a permanent home for American independent cinema. Filmmakers who could not get meetings at the major studios had somewhere to bring their work. Audiences had somewhere to see films that the commercial system would never have distributed. Careers that would never have started without Sundance started there instead. The festival became one of the most significant events in global cinema, and it happened because one actor, who could have simply cashed his box office checks, decided that the system needed something it did not yet have. In his final acting years, he appeared in A Walk in the Woods in 2015 and The Old Man and the Gun in 2018. A film he suggested publicly might be his last. He had always lived partly outside the Hollywood system he had helped to define, spending his time in Utah, avoiding the social circuit of Los Angeles, building something in the mountains that was entirely his own. When he died at Sundance in September 2025, he was at home in the deepest possible sense of the word. Meryl Streep knew all of this. She had watched the whole arc of it from the inside, having worked with him twice and known him for 40 years. She knew the man behind the Golden Image and the Sundance Kid mythology and the Academy Awards and all of it. And what she chose to call him, in the 6 words she sent out to the world when he was gone, was my lovely friend. After everything you now know about what Robert Redford meant to Meryl Streep across 40 years of friendship and 2 films and a hair-washing scene in a Kenyan river, do you think 6 words was the right amount to say about someone that important to her? Or do you think she held something back? And of everything Redford built across his career, from Butch Cassidy to the Sundance Film Festival to Out of Africa, which part of his legacy do you think mattered most? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.